welcome everyone. I'm your host, Garrett Weinzierl, and I'm sitting here today with Dr. Geoffrey Smith, who is not only the owner of GBS Environmental, but also a biology professor at NMSU. Jeff, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're certainly welcome, Garrett. Thanks.
I appreciate you taking the time. So, what have you come to share with us today? I know you're the owner of GBS Environmental, and I know you have a new. So I know you have some research to discuss, but beyond that, I'm here to learn.
Yeah, real good. I appreciate the opportunity. A number of things I'd like to talk about. I'd like to connect with what my son and you talked about a few months ago.
Yes, your son is Lucas Smith, who I believe was on the second ever podcast I produced for the Arrowhead Center.
Yeah, and then a couple of other inventions that we've come up with in the laboratory, and so I'll kind of focus on those because Luke has already covered the NMX product. So that's what I have in mind.
Well, great. Well, talk to me about that product. What exactly is it?
Yeah. Well, this new product is a natural product, like the work that I've been doing with Luke. And so it's from a yeast, and it was discovered by a PhD student of mine, David Johnson. And he walked into my office one day and said, "You've got to look at this." And he showed me an agar plate, which has colonies of microbes on it. Well, these colonies were all inflated with gas. And he and I took a sample of that gas, and it took us a long time to get that, and found that they were filled with hydrogen gas. And so I'd never seen anything like that in my career before, and I've been in environmental microbiology 30 years. And then about a year later, I'd been excited about this, but I said, well, I really want to make sure this is unique. So I took these photographs to a conference, and there were lots of international people there who have more experience than I, and they were from all over the world, and I showed everybody this picture, and they said, "What?" They hadn't seen anything like that, this colony filled with gas, and then to know that it was hydrogen gas. And then to hear that, I said, okay, I've got something unique. And so that's when I decided to push the commercial end and get a patent.
And we even have a visual aid. Would you like me to bring it up at this time?
Yeah, sure. That would be great. So up in that left-hand corner is David's finger holding this agar plate. And there is a colony right there of a yeast, it turns out. And you can see these colonies are just inflated with hydrogen gas. David and I put a gas-tight syringe and injected that gas into a gas chromatograph, found out it was hydrogen. And so that was the initial discovery plate. We've repeated that since then. And basically, I think it represents the core of biotech. And so we want to go from nature to product and utilize nature, utilize the creation the whole time. And so in that second slide at the bottom is we simply feed the organism sugar. So this is showing a single-celled yeast cell that we've since purified. We feed it sugar, and it pumps out this new gen plastic. And so you can see a polymeric material being pumped outside the cell. And so we isolate, purify that plastic. And over on the right is the what we call a hydrogen elastomer product, because it's got these elastomeric properties that inflate and deflate and can trap hydrogen gas. And so this is what we're doing at NMSU, is pushing biology into technology.
Oh, that's fascinating. This is the thing that fascinates me about research in general. Was this? It sounds almost like this was a byproduct of other research that you were doing. Was this something you were even seeking out?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So serendipity is the word David Johnson uses. We were funded from the NSF to look at hydrogen production by biological organisms and to convert, for example, dairy manure into a resource called hydrogen gas. So it was in the midst of that project that David made this discovery. And so it was peripheral to that work. And so we ran out of NSF funding. But when I found out how unique it was, that's where Arrowhead Center came in. I applied for one of their grants to fund innovative ideas, and they thought it was innovative enough. And that really allowed us to isolate the yeast that was producing that polymer and sent us on our way. And so, yeah, it was in the context of this NSF grant, and David is the first to say he relies on serendipity, and so do I. And so that's a little story of how that happened.
That's great. Now, can we talk about the real world applications? What could you do with this new polymer that you have discovered?
Well, I had the idea that we're in the midst of or entering the hydrogen economy, and so I said, well, hydrogen fuel cells, hydrogen cars, and I think those are direct applications. We need a safe way to store hydrogen and an efficient way to utilize it, to transport it. But one of the Arrowhead advisors here at New Mexico State said, that's exactly right. Hydrogen economy, big. But right now, the oil and gas industry needs protection against hydrogen gas because it corrodes steel. And so here is a here and now industry, the oil and gas industry, that needs protection against hydrogen gas, this corrosive aspect that hydrogen has against steel. And so immediate market, oil and gas industry, and then generally hydrogen cars, hydrogen fuel cells. We also are expanding out into other products, but I'll talk about that later.
Okay. All right. So, so did you? I'm assuming many of the folks that we've talked to here, once you discover a new product, it's patented. So have you patented this yet? I'm assuming so, since you're talking about it publicly.
Yeah. So that's again where Arrowhead has come in. I am this geek lab rat professor, know nothing about the commercialization process, and so Arrowhead has been huge in terms of helping this geek move into the commercial world. And so initially that was the whole step. So in 2014 we applied and have a provisional patent, and it's just about to be finalized as a utility patent to cover the polymer. And so it's a matter of a few weeks or a couple months to finalize that patent. One of the interesting things is the idea of, well, do you patent the yeast that produces this compound? And in order to do that, you have to show what they call the hand of man, because it's a natural product. But can someone else isolate this organism using routine methods? And if you can, then you can't patent it. Well, in David's dissertation, he has a 9-page appendix showing a myriad of steps that he took over a year period of time to finally show me that plate that he showed me that one day. And then since then, it's taken us another year to isolate the yeast from that mixture of organisms. And so that's one thing that I'm going to submit if we decide to go to patenting the yeast, is this appendix of David Johnson's dissertation showing no one else but David can do this. So I call it the hand of David that we'll deploy once we get this, if we decide to go the yeast route. So that's just one aspect of this patenting process.
Well, that's great, and congratulations that it's just about said and done.
Thank you.
So what is next after your patent's almost finished? What is the next step?
One thing I want to say a little bit more about the patenting process is maybe the thing I'm most proud of is we've got 4 patents, but there are 3 student co-inventors on those patents. And so here I am at a university. This isn't my own thing that I've gone off and done. This is with the students' help. And so David, Hugo Morales, and Alba Chavez are co-inventors. And so instead of being co-authors on a paper, they're co-inventors on patents. And so I still am pushing the mission of NMSU.
That's something I've heard multiple times now. Every time I talk to any of the inventors from NMSU, it is definitely it's a team effort.
It really is.
So that's
okay. So where we're going from here is looking at other markets, and so interested in developing this as an adhesive and a paint, like I've said, to protect steel from hydrogen gas. But can we use it in other industries? It's self-adhesive. It has the fibers the size of a single molecule. So we've done some atomic force microscopy. And so it's extremely small molecular level fibers. And that's the reason why it can trap hydrogen gas. So it's a unique material. I'm calling it a new gen plastic. And so other applications certainly we're looking at. One example is as connecting to the agricultural field. We've developed a couple of formula for slow release fertilizers, slow release pesticides, and we think this polymer can be part of that formulation that we've developed with other materials. And so we're pushing it into the ag field. And then this afternoon, I'm working with a student, Nathan Tofsted, and he's an engineering student who wants to get involved in biotechnology. So he's taking right now genetics, biochemistry, and microbiology, and he's volunteering in my lab to get this biotech experience. Anyway, he and I are going to take that same yeast cell, and we're halfway through this prep to isolate another polymer from this yeast cell, and it is a beta-glucan-based molecule that is all over the market in terms of it being used as a skin product. It has anti-cancer properties. It's an immune modulator. And so if you Google beta-glucan, there's products out there. Well, we've got a unique strain of yeast that's producing beta-glucan. So this afternoon, we're going to look at beta-glucan as an alternative product from the same yeast.
Wow. What is the testing phase like? Because, I mean, you've already talked about many applications. It sounds like it could be almost difficult to know where to start.
Yeah. Well, one of the neat things is I got a small grant from the New Mexico Small Business Association that's directed by Sandia National Laboratories. So now I'm connected with an industrial engineer, a material scientist at Sandia, who is helping me get real with this material. And so I'm a microbiologist, environmental scientist, biochemist, but I need that application. And so Ray Friddle at Sandia for the last 2 years has been testing the polymer for industrial applications. So heat resistance, flexibility, and then the bottom line, he's quantifying the hydrogen permeation capability of this material. And so it's through help from other experts that we're pushing this forward to make it industry ready.
All right. How close do you think you are to being industry ready?
We're going to finish this grant at the end of the year from the New Mexico Small Business Association. So that's our target, is finishing these details up this year. And so first of next year, we think we're going to be ready. We need to scale things up, but that's industrial engineers can do that pretty easy. It's basically a fermentation-based technique as far as production. And so those methods are pretty tried and true.
Yeah, it's what it sounds like, with so much emphasis on yeast. And
yeah, exactly, right. As a matter of fact, it belongs to the same family as the beer and brewer's yeast. So it's a Saccharomyces yeast, and so it's the best smelling organism I've ever grown. I've grown some pretty nasty smelling organisms, and now I've got this bouquet that I can smell, and it's delightful to be working with yeast.
Sounds like a nice perk of this particular invention.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. So what is the total time now spent on this particular polymer?
Wow. If you want to back up, so David finished his dissertation in 2009. So there was about 1.5 years of work before that. And so we're looking at 8 or 9 years in the development of this. And so this is typical kind of university pace, but Arrowhead says, hey, maybe we can move a little faster and let's stimulate this idea. And so it's really neat to have patents as a goal instead of papers, and be a little bit more practical ended as far as the research steps that we take. And so I'm learning that and passing it on to the students, and we're all entrepreneurs in the laboratory now. Well,
that's great. Has that been like an exciting kind of personal pivot? Because you spoke earlier about how you see yourself as a geek and a lab rat, but yeah. Has it been exciting to get to know the more practical side of things?
Yeah, sure. It's been great. It's been a charge into the research laboratory, but I will always be that lab rat geek. I can't shed that idea. And fine. I do have a story about the help that Arrowhead has been to me. I've already referred to it, but there's also some downside as far as pushing a geek. A few months ago, I was sent unawares to a Shark Tank. And so I'm at this conference up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Innovate. And about 30 minutes before my talk, I'm kind of going over my notes. And of course, I'm a little nervous. And then I hear announced, the third shark has arrived. And I said, the third shark has arrived here? And I say, oh my gosh, this is a Shark Tank. And I've got 30 minutes as a geek, naive minnow to, go up before the shark. So anyway, there they all were. There were 3 of them. They had bared teeth. They had big eyes. And so I spent the entire talk looking at the back row and not looking at these sharks. And they had their time at the end of the talk. They had their time in the day, in the sun. And I managed. But anyway, sometimes Arrowhead is pushing this lab rat geek out into this real world. And okay, thank the Lord, we're good with that.
Well, they challenge. It sounds like they challenge you for the better. They kind of put you out of your comfort zone so that you can grow.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for your time today. If is there anywhere anyone can find more information about your invention?
Yeah, I've got a website, and of course, it's just through Arrowhead, where the various technologies are highlighted. So the 2 technologies that we've developed are on that list, and so I've sent you that website. And then, because I'm still a geek in the Stone Age, you can simply email the geek at gsmith@NMSU, which is New Mexico State University. So anybody want to get a hold of me by email.
Wonderful. Well, Jeff, thank you again for your time. It's been great speaking with you and learning about this new polymer.
Great, Garrett. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Have a great one.
You too.